As a Canadian, I often hear about the debate surrounding the historical and ongoing issues facing Indigenous peoples. It's widely acknowledged that Canada was established through a process that involved genocide, violent conflicts, broken treaties, and numerous injustices against Indigenous peoples. Canada's development has been contentious, rooted in the seizure of lands traditionally inhabited by Indigenous populations. This aspect of our history is incredibly complex and might never be fully resolved. Now, one simplistic solution is the idea of expelling all non-Indigenous Canadians from the country. Considering that Indigenous peoples account for around 5% of the Canadian population, such a drastic measure would likely cause more harm than good. It would be impractical and harmful to displace such a large number of people, disregarding their financial stability and other circumstances. Even the most radical proponents of Indigenous rights would agree that this is not a viable solution. Now, let's talk about a similar debate happening around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Before going any further, I must clarify my position. I do not condone the actions of Israel that I believe amount to genocide, showcasing the darkest side of humanity. To me, it's clear that Israel will be looked down upon in the history books. Honestly, I don't think that the people defending Israel even believe their own words. However, we must be honest with ourselves. How can we, as North Americans, call for the expulsion of the Israeli population without being hypocritical? As established earlier, we are effectively on stolen land, whether we like it or not. So, what makes our staying here reasonable but cruel in Israel's case? Perhaps it's a question of time. North America's colonization began over 500 years ago, while the State of Israel was established just 75 years ago. Should there be a benchmark at which an occupation becomes acceptable? Let's say 100 years. If settlers occupy a land for 100 years, do they suddenly become legitimate? Does that sound reasonable? Then all Israel has to do is maintain their regime for 25 more years, and they're in the clear. I'm sure you see how absurd that sounds. Maybe it should be a question of population. Let's say as soon as the invaders account for 51% of the population, they become a legitimate country. In that case, any country could just dump a bunch of people in a foreign land, claim the territory as their own, and gain international recognition. That's obviously a very flawed concept. The point I'm trying to get to is that just as it is reasonable for any Canadian to feel entitled to the land they were born on, to feel attached to the environment, the plants, the animals, and the streets they grew up around, it is understandable for a newborn Israeli to feel at home. Let's say a Palestinian and an Israeli child are born. If we truly believe that the Palestinian child deserves to stay in his homeland, and the Israeli child deserves to be exiled, then we must also accept that any Indigenous person born in North America is at home, and anyone else should be exiled. Think about it. The only thing that dictates those two children's right to the land is a heavy historical baggage that they truly should not have to deal with. Why should the wars fought by their ancestors dictate the course of their lives from the moment they are born, forcing one to live a miserable life filled with tragedies and death, and the other to likely grow up to become bigoted and full of senseless hate? As much as it personally pains me to say this, if I deserve to live in Canada, Israelis must deserve to stay in Palestine. Let me be clear. My goal here is not to portray the Israelis as innocent people. We may not be able to judge modern-day Canadians for the sins of their ancestors, but Israelis don't get that luxury. They are witnessing their government commit one of the worst genocides of our lifetime. They have been observing as the laws and policies of their leaders force an apartheid regime against their neighbors for decades now. They are the IDF soldiers slaughtering innocent families, bombing residential buildings with no remorse. They are the settlers driving the elderly out of their houses, burning and destroying the farming lands of the Palestinians. They are also the ones defending their government relentlessly on social media. If anyone can stop this massacre, it is the Israeli population as a whole, but they remain complicit. They seem to have a complete lack of empathy towards their neighbors, as if they don't even see Palestinians as humans. They seem to be conditioned from birth to behave so, but that is a topic for another video. Perhaps one of the worst tragedies of this whole issue is that the desires of most Palestinians are misrepresented. I have seen many videos from Palestinian refugee camps where the cameraman asks the children what they desire the most. These desires turn out to mostly revolve around things like bread, fast food, toys, or to see a brother, a sister, a mother, or a father that was lost one last time. Many Palestinians are not even calling for the expulsion of all Israelis. Instead, they seek an independent state where they can govern themselves and live without oppression, to not have to live under an apartheid regime where they are second-class citizens. This is reminiscent of American values, which were founded on the principles of self-governance and revolution. That is why I can't grasp the concept of calling oneself an American patriot, but not condemning Israel for their war crimes. That is also why I mentioned earlier that I don't even think most of the people siding with Israel believe what they say. They are either lying for whatever reason, in complete denial, or simply unable to have critical thoughts. To wrap this up, remember that most of us are forming these opinions in the comfort of our homes, in a virtually conflict-free country. Because of that distance from the turmoil, we are capable of reasonable and logical critical thinking. But even so, we are neither experiencing genocide nor relying on an iron dome for safety. No matter how many 4K videos we have seen, we will never truly grasp the situation. So, the opinions with the most value, outside of formal debates, are those of the Palestinians and the Israelis. We do not hold the absolute truths. There are no fundamental laws of the universe to decide whether a human behavior is right or wrong. We are solely equipped with our rarely objective moral compass. Finally, always ask yourself whether or not the media has an influence on your current opinions. For example, recently on May 13th in Tel Aviv, nearly 100,000 Israelis were protesting against their own government for not striking a deal for the hostages. They also demanded the resignation of the president. There have been many smaller protests against the Israeli government since October 7th. Most people haven't heard of this, as the media heavily controls this kind of information. If Palestinian supporters heard about these protests, would they not have less anger against the average Israeli? And if Israel supporters saw that even Israelis aren't completely in support of their government, would they not realize how problematic their own views are?